Now, answering your questions about the law and legal issues. This is Legal Break with attorney Gary Bruce.
Hello there, Maureen Akers with Gary Bruce today. Gary, thank you so much for joining us again.
Good to be here again.
As always, we are talking today about prescription use and driving, I guess you would say, under the influence. What happens if you are taking a prescribed medicine and you get into an accident?
Right. Well, even if you're just pulled over,
yeah,
it's impaired driving. It's driving under the influence really is the charge, not specific to alcohol. So people need to be careful about that and know. And so I guess the real question becomes this: was it willful? Did you know? Were you aware that you were about to be impaired to the point where you weren't safe to be on the road? And if you were, then there's not only maybe criminal liability, but there's potentially quasi-criminal liability in a lawsuit case with punitive damages. Because you can prove that you just drove around on drugs all the time, and we can't blow in a meter for it. So anyway, there's potential for punitive damages even in a civil case.
Yeah. So the charge would be a DUI then, when right?
I think so.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, that's up to the officer. It's hard. I think it's hard for them to sometimes spot it or know it.
Yeah.
I see it on reports a lot. Yeah, there's something going on here, so you have to do blood work sometimes in that situation. But it's the same thing. If you're distracted, if you're reading your book on your phone or something, it really isn't much different.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not.
just
You're
ridiculous,
right.
So be careful. Watch out who's around you and who's in front of you, and you won't be exposed to these problems.
So then let's talk about the other side of this. Could the prescribing physician or the pharmacy, if they neglected to can anybody else be held responsible in a case like this?
Well, anybody else, I don't know. I would doubt that a medical prescriber would have liability. I can't foresee that issue. Maybe a pharmacy, if they don't warn you about the impact of the drug. I would think that you'd want to take a drug and know how it's going to affect you before you got behind the wheel of a car.
Absolutely.
Where we've seen it, and I think this is an interesting question, and I'm not sure of the answer. So you go to work, you're not functioning right, you're taking a new drug, and your employer says, you ain't right, you need to go home. And they put you on the road knowing that you were impaired.
Oh.
Is there responsibility for your employer or someone who should have known of the problem, and then they just expose all of us to it because they didn't take you off the road?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a question there. So I would be careful. Really, it all boils down to, as always, Maureen, do you know or should have known of a problem you could have prevented? If so, don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, be responsible.
Right, yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Gary, and we look forward to seeing you on the very next Legal Break.